This is Fantastic Reviews. Hello, everybody. This is Fantastic Reviews, your go-to for opinionated thoughts and quips on nerdy movies, video games, etc., etc. This is episode 1, the very first episode of our fledgling little podcast. My name is Marcell, and that over there in each corner, right over there, you can see them, that's Jenna and Joe.
Hello, internets.
I'm waving.
I got a rock. Awesome. Yeah, we're your hosts for this awesome new podcast. So go us. Listen.
Yay!
Listen to this.
That was the internet cheering.
We were just sort of hanging out one day. And by hanging out, I mean I am from the majestic country of Canada. And
Great White North.
yeah, those guys, Jenna and Joe, are from Donald Trump land.
Please don't say
God,
that yet.
Not.
It's a country tearing itself apart. It's like a horror movie
It's
in
much
slow motion.
And
terrifying.
so when I say we've been hanging out, I mean like we were planning to do a podcast on Skype. That's what we did. So this is it.
And here we are.
This is it.
It's the dream.
So just to sort of fill you in, as this is the first episode, this is a podcast where we do movies on all the nerdy things, like mostly movies, but also video games. And is there anything else? Did we choose anything else?
Comics.
Comics.
Comics? Nah.
Yeah.
Derp. You can have my nerd card back.
I will be taking that. You will get it back at the end of the day.
Excuse me.
Don't die on our first podcast, man.
That'd be embarrassing. All right, so listen. We're just going to give you our opinions because this is the internet and you guys asked for it. And by you guys asked for it, I mean we're going to give it to you whether you like it or not. So,
And you accidentally clicked on our link, so
yeah, there you go.
this is the next 30 minutes of your life gone.
Yep. So listen, this week in our first episode, we thought that we would cover something epic, a little bit action-y, a little bit romantic, just a little bit chick flicky, and something that has a huge, huge, huge history. We've decided to cover Godzilla. But no. Not just any Godzilla. Bryan Cranston's Godzilla. Fucking Bryan motherfucking Cranston. 2014 Godzilla.
Making meth Godzilla.
You know, if Jesse Pinkman was played by Godzilla, that'd be a different movie.
It would be a completely different movie.
Yes, that's true. So I love this franchise. You know, before this movie came out, before the disaster that we'll mention only once and be referred to as the Matthew Broderick Godzilla.
I have completely wiped that from my mind. Thanks for bringing it back.
I loved Godzilla growing up. I had like Godzilla King of Monsters, the NES game when I was a kid. It was amazing. Still love it. But I was a big fan of the franchise. And then the 1990 whatever Matthew Broderick version came out. And I was super excited. And I loved it for different reasons that I loved actual Godzilla. And then this came. And I saw that Godzilla was going to be this upright standing, real life looking like monster who's going to fight other monsters. It's going to be great. And it was kind of great.
It was great. It was pretty great.
Yeah.
It was
enjoyable.
movie great.
Yeah. Well, let's give you a warning here. Warning, spoilers ahead. If you don't want this movie spoiled, stop listening.
But
Unless
seriously,
you're cool with
it came
that.
out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
What the fuck? What the hell?
If it was up to me, you'd have 1 week. 1 week to see a movie, and it's done.
Good thing it's not
Spoiled
up to you.
forever.
All right, Joe. Give me a synopsis of this movie in 2 sentences.
Oh boy! All right, the 2-sentence review. All right, what do we got? Okay, so here's what happens. Miners dig deep in the earth and they disturb some prehistoric pods that break out and go towards the nearest nuclear power plant to feed, and then they want to get they bang on.
That was the biggest run-on sentence I've ever heard.
There were so many commas in that sentence.
I got one more.
All right, lay it on us.
Asian research dude wants to see monster fight.
It's the fucking Asian research dude wants to see the monsters fight.
That's it.
Scientists always want to see monsters fight, though.
That's true. All right. So my synopsis of the movie, which is more than two sentences, is it starts out back in 1999 Japan, where there's this mysterious accident where with the reactors in the Genjira nuclear power plant, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sorry, people who actually speak Japanese, but there's an accident with the reactors in that power plant that kills a number of people, including Bryan Cranston's Joe Brody's wife and her team. Then you sort of flash forward 15 years, and Brody's son, who just so happens to be a U.S. Navy officer, learns that Bryan Cranston has been arrested for trespassing in the Genjira quarantine area for trying to recover his data from the accident. They soon actually discover that the accident is caused by a, quote, massive unidentified terrestrial organism, or MUTO, M-U-T-O.
I laugh every time I hear that. I'm sorry.
MUTO. Turns out this MUTO eats radiation, and also turns out there's fucking two of them. There's two MUTOs, two toes.
And they want to bang.
There's that too. They want to wop 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 wop. So there's two of these. Get it all. Yeah, so there's actually two of these crazy monsters, and of course, when shit goes down, Godzilla gets woken up, and he's all like, fuck this shit, fuck those guys. And he sets out and fights some monsters, kicks some ass, goes back to the ocean, goes back to sleep, and that's it. That's really it. Monsters fighting, crushing buildings, and Elizabeth fucking Olsen.
Yeah.
That's it. The plot on this movie is razor thin, but it did it really well.
It's a monster movie, though. It doesn't have to be too deeply.
That's true. I think that's one thing that the Godzilla movies have always done kind of weirdly, is that you've got this little secondary plot with these little people running around, saving princesses, living out their lives, and doing things that they need to do, and then there's a monster fight.
Mm-hmm. Well, this one did the same thing, though. There was still a secondary plot about a kid I don't care about and his family who doesn't matter. And in the background of all this is Godzilla, that they try really, really hard to make you know that he is the hero of this movie. Because at the beginning of the movie, the bad monster kills Brody's son's mom. And it's all the monster's fault she's dead, even though he sent her down there in the first place. And then Godzilla's the one who finally takes revenge for all of them and murders the other monster. So they try so hard to build up this whole secondary thing about this family and how he's estranged from his dad and he blames him for his mom's death, which he should. And then his family back in California, who doesn't factor into this story at all, other than the fact that, oh, by the way, they're in terrible danger, because we needed more of a reason to hate the monster and to feel a connection with these characters, which it doesn't do very well at all. The human characters. I felt more emotion for the MUTO. I can't even say that word. I felt more emotion for that female monster than I felt for anybody else in that movie. I was so sad. I was heartbroken. Especially
when the dude like burns all their eggs.
That hurt my heart.
Oh, not mine. I was like, fuck yeah, look at that, set him on fire.
It was a bittersweet moment, because you're like, you feel bad for her, but then it's like, well, I mean, they were going to destroy the human race, so
I think we would have just been collateral damage at that point. It really wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, it really came down to them or us, and it's unfortunate that it was just, they're just trying to do their thing. They're doing what animals do, just going about their business. We just happen to be really tiny, really insignificant roadblocks.
Yeah, more or less.
Mosquitoes to them. So I actually really did enjoy the movie. I enjoyed it more the first time I watched it, because the second time, you're kind of doing a little bit of a critical analysis of the movie. So I definitely enjoyed it more when I watched it the first time and was just like, yeah, awesome monster movie. And then the second time I'm like, wow, now that I'm really thinking about it, this movie is so silly. Two things that really pop out to me as why it was ridiculous is that when they first find the alien spores in the mine that they accidentally found, and they go into the entrance, they find it, and then there's a beam of light off to the other end. They're like, oh look, and there's just this wide shot of this giant destructive path that's from the island into the water. Nobody saw that. Nobody even there's miners everywhere. People live on this island. Nobody felt something happen when this thing escaped into the ocean. Nobody saw anything. They're all very surprised that there's a monster.
And the other part of that too, and I'm sure you were about to get to that, was with the part in the mountain. Is that where you're going to?
That was where I was going to go next.
Go ahead.
At the end, when they find out that there's a second monster, which apparently was vivisected by the scientists because this was a second spore that was found in there. The Marines are sent into the building that all these weapons are housed in, which is obviously where this monster is, because they didn't incinerate it when they were done, because why not? So they're going into there, they're checking all the doors, and they check one door and they open it, and there's just a giant gaping hole in the room in the side of the mountain, and it's heading towards Nevada.
Las Vegas, no less.
Nobody saw this. They have helicopters right there. If it happened when they were in the building, someone would have heard something. It ripped the entire side of the mountain off, and they're all just like, hey, look, there really is a second one. It's so surprising. The thing makes earthquakes every time it steps, but everyone is surprised that this thing got out.
It was a great shot, though.
It was a really great shot.
Very dramatic.
It was very dramatic. It's just really funny when you think about it, because in the shot, there are helicopters already flying around. Someone could have said, oh, never mind, Tony. It's going. I see it. It's right there. It's right over there.
Unless it just happened.
Even if it just happened, though, someone would have, if they were in the building while it happened and the helicopter was on the other side of the mountain and didn't see it,
there would have been an earthquake.
They would have heard it. There definitely would have been something more than just, hey, look, this one has light inside, and they opened the door.
For that much displaced mountain, there would definitely have been some kind of seismic activity.
Yeah.
So
a little something, a little bit of a T-Rex in Jurassic Park makes the water glass jump and the water jump around in there. You're telling me this 300-foot tall monster didn't cause a little bit of a ruckus?
So I know this is a moot point. But of a movie about giant monsters fighting each other, this is the point you choose to say it doesn't check out?
I know, I didn't say it did check out because it doesn't. I just said it was very silly. I already mentioned the fact that I don't like the backstory of the kid. I don't care about him and his family. Well, again, obviously, they're trying to make a way to get us on Godzilla's side, because we don't see Godzilla at first. We see that opening clip sequence, which I thought was very great, where they have all the old historical files that are coming up in the clip sequence at the beginning of the movie, which gives you the backstory without having someone do a voiceover, which I like personally. I don't want someone to give me the entire story at the beginning. So there's a lot of foreshadowing to it later on, but they're trying to get us on his side with a very emotional death of the kid's mom, and then we get it more when Godzilla goes to kill these bad monsters. They're the evil monsters, because keep in mind that the MUTOs glow red with their nuclear powered energy, but Godzilla glows blue, and we all know from Star Wars that red is bad and blue is good.
It's true.
But I mean, really, at the end they want everyone to cheer for Godzilla, which they do, but no one's going to cheer for a giant fuck off monster rampaging through the city. Doesn't matter if he killed the other monster. He caused just as much damage, but he's the good monster because the other one killed someone's mom.
Right? You know what they did?
It's always how it works with those things too.
They did a really great job with the reveal, and I really love this ploy that they've been doing with monster movies, and I didn't really see it until Cloverfield, where you'll see bits and pieces, just fleeting glimpses of the monster throughout the film, and getting closer to the end, then you actually get the full reveal.
I love that.
Yeah, and you get this huge build up to it, right? And you're like, oh, Godzilla's there. I know he's there. Look, those are the spikes coming out of the water, but you don't actually see him. Then all of a sudden, there he is in all his glory, and you got that awesome Godzilla sound. And funny story about that sound is actually owned by the Toei company. Is it Toei or is it Toho? I don't remember. But yeah, that sound is the roar is trademarked, and they had to buy that sound, but that's the sound. And if they use any other roar on the planet, any manufactured or otherwise, this would not be a Godzilla movie.
It's very true. It wouldn't be. But going back to what you're saying about the reveal of Godzilla, and I think even to an extent the reveal of the other monsters, they did that so well. It wasn't just, oh, suddenly here's a monster. They showed his spikes. Then they showed the water receding. Then they have the flare guns when they're in Hawaii, and the flares go up, and you just see this red outline of his leg, and that's all you see for a while before he finally fights the first MUTO. And you see, I can't pronounce it. Leave me alone. He fights the first alien monster.
When he fights the first mimosa.
Mimosa. I hate those two. It's fine. But when he finally first fights that one, and you see both of them full view, that was a great choice. Whomever came up with that, because you're right. When they did it with Cloverfield, and well, I didn't like that movie. The cinematography on it was pretty fantastic for those reveals on that. They did Godzilla even better, because I didn't feel disappointed when I saw Godzilla. I saw it and I was like, yes, this is Godzilla, and my heart stopped a little bit.
They did a really great job paying homage to the original Godzilla. It really did carry on the original Godzilla spirit. Like in the 90s movie, he was just this animal doing his thing. Except Godzilla was never just an animal. He was like some kind of benevolent god monster who came in times of great need and fought monsters and went into outer space and did all kinds of crazy fucked up things. And that is Godzilla. Godzilla is a good guy. And I don't even remember his name, but the Asian guy, the researcher guy who wants to see the monsters fight, the whole movie, he regarded Godzilla as
a force of nature.
A force of nature. That's it. It's like, everything equals out, and these monsters are here. Godzilla is the great equalizer. He's going to come and fuck that shit up and bring about peace to the land again. That is God fucking Zilla.
It's a good thing that scientist was right, though, because he could have been very wrong. Though, going back to your comment about how Godzilla is an equalizer and a force of nature, and how he's portrayed as a good, benevolent force who eventually rights wrongs. In the beginning of the movie, when we first see the family and the son is in his room, when he's leaving, on his wall by his door when he leaves, there is a picture, there's a poster of Godzilla fighting the monster already there. So I don't know if that was just a clever little thing foreshadowing, because if you're not paying attention, you miss it. Or if Godzilla is actually supposed to exist already in this world as a story, though no one ever really brings it up.
I didn't notice that, and that is amazing.
Yeah, and it's actually Godzilla as we see him in this movie, and the other monster, which I can't pronounce, so I'm going to stop trying. He's actually fighting that monster. Like it's actually them battling, and I thought that was really neat that they did that and put that in.
That is really cool. I always love hearing about Easter eggs, but I never actually noticed the Easter eggs when they happen.
Well, I had to watch it twice, and the second time I watched it, I saw that, and Joe actually didn't catch it, so we had to rewind it to go back again. So it's a very small shot. It's just a small poster right beside his door frame when he's leaving the room to go put the happy birthday sign up for his dad.
Yeah, quick. It's like a second that you see it.
Another point I want to bring up about why this movie is also silly, although awesome. Why do they have EMP blasts?
That's the thing. Why can Godzilla breathe radiation fire?
Why can he breathe? Like, the radiation fire thing makes more sense, because that does something physically to another being. He kills it. He rips its head off with that thing. Okay, I understand that. The EMP blasts, there was no technology millions of years ago. What would that have affected? Unless it was just the shockwave of the blast as it was being pulsed, was the only thing I can think of as to why in nature they would have that. But they wouldn't. The reason they brought it in is because there has to be a way for them to make all the computers not work. Because otherwise we would just drone them from space.
Yeah, but I mean, from an evolutionary standpoint, like if you think of it logically and scientifically, then I mean these are radioactive creatures. They were born like way before time began, and they fed off the natural radiation of the Earth, which no longer exists. So they had to evolve in a way to get that radiation from somewhere. So over the course of human,
keep in mind that the two monsters Godzilla fights were spores that they just found 10 years ago. So they weren't evolved. They were ones that they were there and in stasis.
That's true, but who's to say that those spores were there for billions of years? How do you know that that's not from another?
Because 20 years ago, we definitely would have seen those things running around.
Not necessarily, because let's say there was
even if they died out at
creature.
the time of the dinosaurs, that's 65 million years. We definitely would have seen some fossils of them.
But that's the thing. We haven't seen fossils or spores of any other sort, and we know there's more than one. So, yeah. I mean, logically speaking, there's a very distinct possibility that there has been a number of these creatures that have not made themselves known. And they don't necessarily have to be giant ones. Maybe these ones are only giant ones because they have just now figured out that they could sap huge levels of radiation out of power plants.
But that's the first one that escaped, went to the power plant, and he was already that big. If you go by just the way that it looked when it escaped from the cave it was in, which it was in the bones of another Godzilla-like creature, which makes me assume that whatever it was killed that Godzilla, laid its eggs, and went off or died after the battle. Those were the two spores that survived, but they couldn't continue because there was no more food source left. The scientist at the beginning of the movie says that they evolved to live further and further underground, which means if there are more of these monsters living, they're so far underground we don't notice them. Which, how do they survive down there? But that's fine. So these were the two that were left before they moved under the earth somewhere, which is essentially most likely where Godzilla is, at the bottom of the ocean or underneath the mantle down that way. Which also begs the question of how Godzilla knows that they're there and how he knows when to come and fight them if he's supposed to be living underground.
Well, if you think of it this way, I mean, if you really want to argue the biology of things, they didn't see these pods until they had mined so far deep underground that, so far that no one else has mined that before. And these are ancient creatures. We have no idea what their biology was or, what their biology could have been theoretically. So maybe once they dug them out, opened the hole, they were able to sense the radiation coming from the nearby power plant where maybe they couldn't before if they were surrounded by rock. I really honestly don't know how any of that stuff works.
It sounds like from the movie that when they broke in, you're right, because that's the reason it left, was to go to that power plant to feed. And the reason that they survived was because they didn't need to feed. They were in some sort of stasis, which animals do now. There's plenty of species out there that can just go into hibernation or stasis for quite a long period of time when it gets too cold out, or the eggs are still viable even if even after so long of a period, so long as they have what they need to eventually hatch. But my question was how the EMP blast for those monsters doesn't really sync up well with me, aside from to make the movie go, we need a way to make all the computers not work so the humans are incapable of fighting it. And then how did Godzilla know where they were if he is also supposed to be in some sort of stasis or hibernation? Because they're not giving off any more radiation than they were before, because they're using the same radiation that we're already putting out, like from the power plant or from the nuclear sub that it eventually attacks.
So I've got a couple of theories. I've read a couple of theories, and I've got a bit of my own. So to address the EMP thing, number one, they eat radiation. So what if the radiation or the EMP blast is actually a side effect of the radiation? Like if it stores up gas in its system to use it as a defense mechanism, or in this case, if they're eating the EMP and when they feel threatened, they have all this stored up, they're eating the radiation, they have this stored up radiation energy that they can release as EMPs as a defense mechanism.
Oh, okay. So see, that makes sense. So, I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Which is a really fantastic theory, and I'm getting this from the internet. But another one that I just read is, and this kind of lines up with the whole like Godzilla lore, and really lines up with the storytelling of the classic Godzilla, in that what if these species weren't, like, what if they're not natives of Earth? What if they were put there as spores by alien beings whenever? So maybe they were coded in their DNA that after so many years or so many generations, whatever, they'll evolve these specific traits to better survive in that time of frame. Because, I mean, if we have aliens who are, for whatever reason, want to put these things on Earth, maybe it's to cleanse it so they can terraform it to their own likings, whatever, who's to say that that's not part of their design?
Interesting theory. I don't think I buy it in the realm of the movie universe that it is created from this particular movie.
It would match up with the storytelling plot devices that they've used in previous ones. I mean, look at Mecha Godzilla in the classics as well. So I mean, I don't know if they'll go that far. I mean, it'd be really, if they were to bring aliens into this, it would really be the fans of the original who would love it.
I think it would kind of ruin it. At least for me, it would ruin it if it turned out to be, oh, they're just alien monsters. I think it's really neat that the way they were playing it in this movie, at least from this particular movie, that they were just ancient creatures that predated anything we had known before. And there just so happens to be a few survivors left. Because that brings up a whole other realm of possibility of what did they breed and what came after them that may still have these abilities or are descendants of them that may maybe come out of the woodwork later now that they've awakened again. I kind of like that rather than some alien force coming and they're just gonna do whatever they want. But anytime.
Why would one MUTO species awaken, then all of a sudden for sequels down the line, a completely different species would awaken, and then a different one? It makes, I don't see a reasonable reason as to why they would all wake up all at once, other than if it was a design in that, you know, maybe some creatures from outer space are saying, okay, so the evolution is on track to build a really advanced civilization, and they're probably going to learn how to use nuclear, or they're probably going to learn how to use fossil fuel or whatever. And they can say,
are they really a deterrent for each other or for us?
Well, that's the thing. Maybe they want to get rid of us and harvest what we've created. So if they say, well, human race, you know, in the future.
There's so many easier ways to get rid of us, because you could just unleash 2 Godzillas and we're just done. That's the end of the species.
It could, but maybe Godzilla, I don't know. That's a really in-depth
It's an interesting theory, though.
But
I'm going to say it is an interesting theory. I don't particularly like that one because it takes away, I think, some of the lore and the specialness that the movie already has, and some of what has already come before, in that it's something our own Earth created. This is something our own nature has, and what else is in store for us if we continue on this path we're going on? Because the MUTO, thank you, probably wouldn't have woken up if we hadn't disturbed it. If we hadn't disturbed it, Godzilla would never have had to come after it. So what are we doing to the Earth that's causing these things to progress when they shouldn't have to? You know, what are we affecting? You know, how are we affecting our surroundings and the environment that it has to come up?
So you're saying the movie has an environmentalist point to it?
I think I mean, I'm not going to look too deeply into that because probably not. But to me, and definitely with the scientists saying there's a balance. Nature always has a way of balancing everything. If the MUTO is a destructive force of nature, and Godzilla is a good force of nature, not even good and evil, but 2 opposing sides, that means that there's a reason behind that. I mean, the MUTO would never have been able to survive in our world anyway, even if Godzilla hadn't gone after it, because eventually they would have used up any of the nuclear power we still have. There's not much left. They can't survive up here. Even if Godzilla hadn't come, eventually they would have died off from starvation or gone back underground. So we caused them to wake up, because we're meddling in stuff we shouldn't be meddling in. And we had to have another force of nature come to fix that situation because we could not fix it ourselves. All we were doing was throwing more nukes at it because hopefully that solves the problem. You know, they eat that, but I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point of view. And I can see them, like I can see from a writer's standpoint that they might want to take the sort of the god aspect, like the spiritualistic aspect, like we have, opposite forces fighting to keep the balance. But then again, modern movies and modern storytelling is so against that because it's so cheesy.
True. Like Godzilla's an older story. You can tell that story to a new generation without it being too cheesy, I think. And I think they did it well because the entire scientific community behind that movie, the two scientists that we saw anyway, that was their stance that we should let them do what they need to do because nature will work itself out if we just step out of it. If we don't mess with it, everything will work out the way it's supposed to. And then we have to deal with the fallout of all the buildings and dead people, but still.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's one implication, though, that I just kind of thought of, and I think it's interesting. What must have the ecosystem been like when, it was just these creatures on the Earth? I mean, you have Godzilla coming in it wasn't easy, but he wiped out these two MUTOs by himself practically. I mean, so were the MUTOs just an inferior, breed of animal that the Godzillas just kind of fed on, or?
That's a good question.
There were also babies.
There were babies.
Babies?
Yeah,
she laid those eggs.
Yeah.
That is a good question, though, and it's a question that I had previously about it, because why does Godzilla attack them? If they're two ancient creatures who used to exist in the same time frame, and Joe brought this up before that, they might just be natural enemies. Well, even in this day and age, natural enemies don't just fight just to fight. They fight over food sources, or if one of them is hungry. I mean, you can see lions in. You see lions, they're not going to go and kill every single gazelle that's out there. They're going to kill the one that they need to eat because they're hungry, unless it's a crazy lion. So why does Godzilla go after them? Why does he kill them? There's no real competition over food source because obviously he was surviving wherever he was. He didn't need to come up. So why does he have to defeat them? What makes him go after these two creatures, unless it's because they're either not supposed to exist or because there's a higher purpose for him to have been there to take them out. And it's not just because he cares about humanity, because he doesn't.
Well, here's the thing. Another one of these things that I found on the internet, but Godzilla is pretty much a living nuclear reactor. He needs radiation to survive. So it's been described that he absorbs radiation deep under the ocean from the Earth's core. Now, these MUTOs are kind of like parasites, and they eat radiation. Aww. They're a threat to him. If
that
he
could
allows,
be why that those spores were on the skeleton of the other one in the beginning then. So they are competing for food source, in that Godzilla is a food source for them.
Or rather than that Godzilla is not necessarily a food source for them, but rather they're a threat to him because they're consuming the food source that he needs.
Interesting.
She needs.
They need.
I'm pretty sure technically.
We're gonna call it a they.
It's a she, he, it.
I think Godzilla is a he, but there's not like Godzilla stuff flapping around. We see a lot of it, so I'm pretty sure it's just a they.
Yeah, well, I like the asexual idea. I know that Godzilla can make babies. I mean, Godzilla Jr. or Little Godzilla or whatever the hell it was called from the old movies, which was super stupid, but it's been portrayed multiple times that Godzilla has had offspring.
Well, that's pretty interesting, though. Anyway, I mean, I think it is. And I also feel bad. I feel like I've been talking this whole time. So, Joe, what did you think the movie of as a whole? Like, what were your thoughts?
It was a monster movie. I mean,
It was a really well done monster movie too.
Well, yeah,
it was like a sci-fi one.
I didn't mean that to sound like a bad thing. I mean, but it's a monster movie. That's what it is. I mean, there were some weak attempts to try and make some human connections with the characters, just to kind of make it seem more tragic. Oh no, they're blowing shit up, whatever. But it's a monster movie. I mean, these monsters are gonna fight. They're gonna fight, and that's what the movie is essentially. It's what it comes down to. Bryan Cranston or not. Although I have to say, Bryan Cranston does give a very, very convincing performance.
There's
Bryan
nothing
Cranston
that man can't do. He is a national treasure.
I think he is incredibly underrated.
He was fantastic. I would have preferred, actually, if he had been the one going on the adventure, with these creatures rather than his son, because I felt no emotional connection to him at all. But Bryan Cranston's character, I felt for him. I honestly felt for that character who was going through this, who knew there was something they were covering up, who knew that it broke his family, who knew he couldn't continue because of what happened, and yet he was still trying. And then you have his son who's a douchebag and just mean to him all the time, but has that moment of, oh, Dad, you were right. Oh, no, you're dead. I didn't feel anything for him as a character, and maybe I would have if they had spent more time on him rather than on his, like, the backstory of why he was alone. Like, I don't know that we really needed that first opening scene of him as a child with Bryan Cranston, and they could have probably opened with him coming onto leave and going to his family and getting the phone call without the rest of the background. And maybe I would have felt more for him, but I didn't care what he was doing. I just felt he was very convenient just to have him there, but I didn't feel anything for him. Like I said, I felt more emotion. I mean, aside from Bryan Cranston, who fucking nailed that, I wanted to cry. I felt so bad for him. But I felt more emotion for the MUTOs when they finally got to the city and the male MUTO brings her a nuclear bomb. He's like, look, I brought this for you. And she's like, holds it to her stomach with all her babies. And they have that little nuzzling moment. I'm like, oh, it's a family. Don't kill them. And then
you're such a girl.
She lays off her eggs. And I'm like, it's LA. It's fine. No one cares if it's gone. But then she lays her eggs, and they have that moment where they're fighting Godzilla and they're just tearing into him. And she knows that her babies are dead. And she just has that heart-wrenching moment where she just screams and goes to look for them, and they're just dead, and she cries. I'm like, I felt more connection to her than to the son or his wife, who was crying the whole time we saw her most of the time.
Elizabeth Olsen, who, I mean, again, I'm not knocking the actors for this either. They tried to shoehorn in a story I didn't think they needed to. That's my complaint. Well, that's the thing. It's a monster movie.
Well with hers. I think she was great at that. They could have just focused on a nurse that was like, I don't know how to save my son. And I was like, oh, yeah, you should get out of there instead of waiting for your husband to save you from the giant fuck-off monster. How is he going to save you? Go to the evacuation site. I was very mad at her about that. But I felt for that creature who didn't even have a word of dialogue and had basically no facial expression whatsoever, but you felt in that moment. And I think that's an amazing thing they can do with a monster who doesn't look remotely human.
That was totally 100% planned.
Who's destroying buildings and civilization and killing people. But it's those moments where you go, these are just animals. They're really just primal forces. You can't blame them for doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is reproducing and just going about their business. It's not their fault we're in the way. Yeah. I mean, again, like you said, it comes down to them or us, and unfortunately, they were the ones who had to go. But I wish they kind of could have stayed. Like, could we give them an island?
Like a monster island?
Like a monster island. Like, that would spawn a whole different franchise.
I think it would spawn the same franchise.
More or less. All that aside, though, there were some amazing visuals in this movie, as we had mentioned before. The reveal of Godzilla, the Halo jump sequence, the part where what's his name? The two dudes are laying on the train tracks on the bridge. The MUTO's kind of like stalking underneath them. There were some really good visual, intense moments that I think really did pop out in this movie, and overall, it was done very well.
Visually, I think this movie did an excellent job too, because like you said, that one scene when they're on that bridge and the MUTO is just walking underneath them, you see that close up of its eye. That was very neat. I really liked how they made their facial features look, especially those eyes, because there's no pupil. It's just a giant red glowing orb of destruction. I really like that. Even though it's not doing anything, it comes off very malevolent. Yeah. It was very good. I agree. I think visually all around, I don't think there was one scene that even the silly scenes that were like, okay, really, guys, that's crazy. Like this facility has less security than Arkham Asylum if it can just escape like that and no one notices. Yeah. But even those scenes were just visually done very well. Even they were very tightly done scenes too. I didn't feel like there were unnecessary scenes in here, but just some story and background that didn't really need to be in the movie. I don't think it took away from the movie, but it was very silly.
Yeah, it was very visually striking. It definitely did a great job with the visual effects. It looked great. It really did a great job of making you feel for these monsters as characters rather than plot devices.
Yes.
I mean, it's a kaiju movie. You're not going to see a kaiju movie for in-depth plot. You go to see a kaiju movie to see big monsters fighting. I think they did a great job with that.
That being said, they raised the bar for monster movies. I really think they did, because they make you feel for the monster, and visually it was just astounding. But I mean, even sort of weak plot points here and there as sometimes, and the kind of, I don't want to say shoehorned in story of the kid, because they need a human element to it. I do understand that. I wish they had gone with Bryan Cranston's character, because he felt like more of a connection with him and what his struggle was than his son. But even that being said, they really did raise the bar. I really want to see another movie like this come out, to see what they could do with another monster. Not necessarily Godzilla, or again Godzilla. I'm fine with that. Go for it. They're just making a second one.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that you were in luck. They just announced, like a week or two ago, they are going to make a Godzilla 2.
Yeah. Good. But even so, I'd like to see them branch out. Let's see other monster movies. Let's see what else they can do with.
Man, all you have to do is look at Japan.
Guys, but see what they do. It's amazing.
Tons of great monster movies. I mean, we've had a couple good ones over here.
Our monster movies are sucky monster movies.
I don't know. We had a good one in, what's it called? Pacific Rim. That was a fantastic movie. We had Cloverfield, and I mean, it was a little bit ahead of its time in my eyes with the shaky cam, which is hard to watch, but I love the idea. I love the movie. In fact, I always said that the only way that movie would be better is if the Cloverfield monster was actually Godzilla.
Yeah. But, I think that's what everyone was expecting it to be.
Yeah. I think they tried to make the Cloverfield movie like
our Godzilla,
and it was okay, but
I can't get over the shaky cam.
Yeah, I think the found footage aspect of that really kind of I don't want to say ruined it, but
I think
took away from it.
Yeah, we're over it. So we. Long story short, we're over the shaky cam, which was evident in the newer Cloverfield movie. This movie, though, great movie, great monster fights, great visual effects, not so great plot. But I mean, what are you looking for? I give it maybe a 6.5 Bryan Cranstons out of 10.
I would give this a solid 7 Bryan Cranstons. For Bryan Cranston's bit and the MUTO's part alone, 7 Bryan Cranstons.
7.
7.
I would give it 8.
8? A solid 8. That's really putting it up there.
Because I went into this knowing it was going to be a monster movie, and yeah, the human plot line of it was like, nah, so that's why it kind of took off. But I mean, it was a monster movie. We saw a monster fight. We saw monsters fuck shit up. LA got blown up. I mean, what more do you want in a monster movie? I'm saying 8, and I'm sticking by that.
All right.
Love it. Great.
Good times.
We'll
I look forward to Godzilla's resurgence and see what he fights next.
An average, we'll say 7 Bryan Cranstons out of 10 for us.
All right, 7 out of 10 Bryan Cranstons.
If we ruin this movie for you and you haven't watched it, get out there and watch it. It's on Netflix in Canada, at least right now. Watch it.
Also,
it's not on Netflix US. It's very disappointing.
Yeah. Also, we did say spoilers, so shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on you for listening.
I do have one question for Marcell, though, before we wrap up the critique portion of this. And as our resident purveyor of all things Godzilla, if there was any one monster in all of movie history that you would want to see Godzilla fight, who would it be?
Mothra.
You've thought about this.
I was thinking about this now, and you know what? Mothra has to make an appearance. And I mean, it's always been that Godzilla and all these other monsters were just monsters doing their thing, but Mothra was always a purveyor of good. It was always a force of good. And there were these little miniature princesses. She's like, oh, Mothra will save it. Mothra is a good guy in a world full of animals. Mothra. And you know what? I don't think that Mothra will come in as a good guy off the hop. I think maybe Godzilla 2 will fight Mothra. Mothra will be the bad guy. Then Mothra will fuck off. Godzilla 3 comes out. There's like an even bigger, badder bad guy. And then Godzilla can't possibly win. Then all of a sudden, bam, Mothra team up. Yeah.
You Facebook Mothra. You Facebook them. Hey guys, I know we left things weird, but can you come help me with this? Mothra's like, okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes.
Be more the other way. Like Mothra is there to keep things good, and Godzilla just happens to have a motive that aligns with it. They just sort of align in their meanings and what they want, and they team up. It'd be great.
The enemy of my enemy.
Yeah. All right. What are you guys looking forward to in the next coming weeks? What's coming up?
Ooh, X-Men.
Yeah, we're gonna go see X-Men this weekend at the drive-in. So I'm excited. I liked the first two. I hope this one continues to go well. Although I hear reviews are very mixed, so we'll see what happens.
But I love what they did with First Class and where they went with Days of Future Past, and I'm very excited to see where they're moving forward from here with the new younger team.
If you want to tell us what you thought about our review, or you'd like to give us some feedback, some ideas, you want to give us some constructive criticism, or you just want to call us a bunch of fucking assholes, do it. Email us. Joe, what's our email address?
Our email address is fantastic. Shit.
Don't type that in.
Fantastic Reviews Podcast at gmail.com. I'm sure we'll have links to our email, our blog site, and all our social media accounts on wherever we post this podcast.
You got it.
Linked below.
Linked below or above, depending on how this blog goes. Anyways, this is Fantastic Reviews. This is episode 1. That was Godzilla. Thank you for hanging out with us. This is Marcell signing off.
Bye.
Bye, Internets.